When people imagine freedom, they usually picture beaches or sunsets. For me, freedom looked like driving away from my old life with everything I owned stuffed inside a second-hand camper van. I was 28 years old, recently divorced, recently broken. My marriage lasted 6 years. 5 of those years were miserable. Years of control, manipulation, humiliation. By the time the divorce finally ended, most of my money was gone. The only thing I could realistically afford was an aging camper van with faded blue paint and a broken radio. Oddly enough, I loved it immediately because it was mine. Nobody could scream at me inside it. Nobody could monitor my phone. Nobody could tell me where I was allowed to go. I adopted a dog before leaving. A terrier mix breed called Bear. One fluffy ear, one eye, always half closed. Not a type of dog that would easily find a loving home. I decided to give him a new, free, and lovely life. Just one that I got for myself. He looked sad and miserable in that cage, at the animal welfare, but once he got out, he showed his sweet, friendly character. He was a dog that loved everyone who would give him even a little attention, as if he was grateful for it. For the first few months, life on the road felt healing. I met other travelers, retired couples, young backpackers, families homeschooling their kids while living out of vans. There was this strange sense of community among people who lived that way. At night, we'd sit near campfires exchanging stories. For the first time in years, I felt light. Then, one day came the storm. I was driving through a heavily forested area in Oregon. Rain started around sunset. Not normal rain, violent rain. The kind that makes the windshield wipers useless. I found a narrow clearing deep in the woods and parked for the night. There were no other campers nearby, at least none I could see. Despite the bad weather and being alone in a deserted area, I felt safe. I made dinner for Bear and me and tucked in bed. Bear curled beside me while rain hammered the roof like thousands of drums beating at once. Worm Bear's body and the repeated sound of rain made me fall asleep almost immediately. Around midnight, I heard knocking. 3 slow knocks. I froze. At first, I thought the branches were hitting the roof. Then it happened again, louder this time. Bear stood up instantly. His fur rose along his back. He started barking, nervously, aggressively. I looked through the small side window, but couldn't see much through the rain. Then I heard a woman's panicked voice. "Please help me. Someone broke into our camper. My boyfriend's hurt." Every instinct told me to help. But Bear kept barking violently, standing between me and the door. And that dog loved everybody. That made me keep the door shut. I asked where she was. She said their camper was stuck farther down the road. I told her I could call the police. Immediately, her tone changed. "No police!" That sentence hit me wrong instantly. I felt a cold shiver down my back. Something wasn't right here. She continued talking fast. "There is no time. He's bleeding really badly. I just need someone to help me move him because I can't carry him alone." I was holding my phone, not knowing what to do. Something was telling me not to open the door. There was something terribly wrong. I felt both fear and confusion as Bear continued barking frantically. The whole situation felt deeply unsettling. She became irritated. "No, just come outside for 1 minute." At that moment, Bear lunged toward the other side of the camper, growling aggressively. I looked through the window he was looking at, and I saw. Someone was walking toward us, a man. I couldn't see his face, but I felt my blood run cold. I jumped behind the wheel, started the engine, and hit the gas. The tires slipped badly in mud, and for one horrible second, I thought we'd get stuck. But somehow we made it back to the main road. I drove until I reached the nearest town. I parked the van in a supermarket parking lot, making sure the security camera on the streetlight pole was pointed toward me. My hands were shaking, and I kept checking the streets around me every few seconds, terrified they had followed me. I couldn't sleep that night. Bear slept calmly beside me, which gave me some comfort and made me feel like we were finally safe. The next few days, I stayed in the urban area, constantly on the move, like driving further would keep me away from this creepy couple. Every time I heard a woman's voice nearby, I'd instinctively listen closer, terrified I might recognize the voice from the woods. That encounter genuinely changed something in me. I didn't feel safe being alone on the road anymore. 2 days later, I stopped at a small grocery store in another town. While paying for coffee, I noticed newspapers stacked near the register. One headline immediately caught my attention. Couple found murdered in forest campsite. My stomach tightened. I bought the paper and read it inside the camper. A retired couple traveling in a motorhome had been killed in the same forest where I parked. The article said police discovered a small camera mounted near the top of the victim's camper. The footage showed a woman knocking on their door during heavy rain. When the couple opened the camper, a man emerged from the darkness beside it. The footage ended shortly after. Police believe the killers targeted isolated campers. I was reading in disbelief, my hand shaking. A cold chill ran through my body. I looked at Bear, who was resting his head on my lap, looking at me with his cute, innocent eyes. He saved my life. All that made me almost faint. If Bear hadn't been there, if he hadn't acted so violently toward this woman, I would have opened the door and I would have died in an isolated forest, and nobody would have ever known what happened to me in those woods. A few days later, another announcement appeared in the news. The killing couple had been arrested. It should have made me feel relieved. Instead, I felt my solo camping life had come to an end. I took a small house in the center of a small town where everyone knows everyone, got a job in a local grocery store, and started a new chapter in my life. Even now, years later, I still hear that knocking whenever it rains heavily outside. I still lock every door obsessively and check every window and lock before going to bed. And Bear, he's an old little guy now, but he still follows me everywhere, like he's still watching my back. I moved to Chicago because I thought a new city would mean a new, bright beginning. I was 26, fresh out of college debt, finally got a job that actually paid well. Everything felt exciting. New apartment, new co-workers, new routines. I enjoyed walking through crowded streets where nobody knew me. Every day, I took the same route to work and back home. Over time, I started noticing the same people along the way. Sarah, the waitress at the coffee shop near my apartment, where I bought coffee and a sandwich every morning. Old Ms. Clara, the owner of the flower shop on the corner. And further down the street, Mr. Yang, a middle-aged Chinese man who sold food from a small street stall. There was also Linda, the hairdresser. Her salon was well known, and whenever she wasn't busy working, she'd stand outside watching people pass by, always ready with a joke that could make anyone smile. Slowly, the neighborhood started to feel like home. Then the flowers started arriving. The first bouquet showed up at work on a Tuesday morning. Pink tulips, no card. Everyone in the office teased me about having a secret admirer. I laughed too, but honestly, I was confused. A week later, another bouquet arrived. White daffodils this time, still no note. I asked the receptionist whether they knew who delivered them. They didn't. I started paying attention to my coworkers. I thought some of them must be the ones sending me flowers, as I haven't met anyone new in the past few months. But no one looked suspicious. Then I started noticing the man. At first, only occasionally. Outside the coffee shop. Across the street, I walked home, sitting on the bench in front of my apartment, always alone. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap. Sometimes I'd catch him staring before he looked away. I convinced myself I was imagining things. So many people use the same way, just like me. Of course I would meet the same faces every day. Soon, the cold November rains started settling over the city, and days shortened. It would already be dark before I even got home from work. One rainy evening, I was coming back from work while heavy rain poured over the city. The streets were crowded with people rushing home under umbrellas, headlights reflecting off the wet pavement. I was holding my umbrella with one hand and my bag with the other, trying not to step into deep puddles, when suddenly I slammed into someone so hard that my bag slipped from my shoulder and crashed onto the sidewalk. Everything was scattered across the street. My phone, makeup, notebook, pens, all of it spilled into the rainwater. "Jesus, I'm so sorry," a man's voice said immediately. When I looked up, I saw a tall man in a dark suit and raincoat, staring down at his briefcase lying open on the wet pavement. Papers had blown everywhere. He quickly bent down to help collect my things. I crouched down too, grabbing whatever I could before it got soaked. Up close, I noticed how well dressed he was. Clean haircut, expensive watch, calm voice. He kept apologizing politely. "I really didn't see you coming," he said. I apologized too, embarrassed. After a moment, we both laughed awkwardly. "I guess the weather's to blame," I said. "Definitely," he replied with a small smile. Once we gathered everything, he handed me my notebook and wished me a good evening. I did the same, and we walked away in opposite directions. At first, I thought nothing of it, but when I entered my apartment building lobby, the doorman called after me. "Miss, your wallet and keys." I froze. He walked over holding them in his hand. "The nice gentleman brought them back just now, said he accidentally picked them up while helping you." The second he said that, I felt my stomach tighten, because suddenly, all I could think about were the flowers, the mysterious bouquets that had been arriving at my work for weeks. No cards, no names. I had eventually refused to accept them anymore, and after that, they suddenly stopped coming. Standing there in the lobby with my wallet in my hand, I remember thinking, was that him? For the next several days, I found myself looking for the man everywhere. On the subway, near the coffee shop, across crowded streets during rush hour. Part of me expected to see him standing somewhere watching, but I never saw him again. Weeks passed. Nothing strange happened. No flowers, no strange feelings, no signs of being watched. Slowly, I started calming down again. Then one night, while I was preparing dinner, listening to my favorite music at home, the phone buzzed. The message came from an unknown number. "Dinner looks delicious. I like burritos too." The message made me jump, because that was exactly what I had just made for dinner. I stared at my phone, my stomach tightening. Slowly, I typed back, "Who is this?" No answer. I tried calling the number immediately, but it was already disconnected. A horrible feeling crept over me. I rushed to the living room window and looked outside. I froze. A man was standing across the street. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap. He was standing completely still in the pouring rain, facing directly toward my apartment building. My blood ran cold. Without even thinking, I grabbed my apartment keys and ran downstairs. The doorman stood up the second he saw me. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked. "There's someone outside," I said breathlessly. "He's messaging me." My voice was shaking badly. The doorman immediately walked outside with me, scanning the street, but the man was already gone. The rain hammered against the sidewalk while cars passed through puddles, but there was no sign of him anywhere. The doorman tried calming me down. "Maybe it's just a coincidence," he said gently, but nothing about it felt like a coincidence. I went back upstairs feeling sick. My hands were trembling so badly that I struggled to unlock my apartment door. Once inside, I checked every room twice. Then I locked every window and turned on all the lights. A heavy pressure built inside my head. Who was that man? What did he want from me? That night, I didn't sleep at all. I lay in bed shaking with feverish anxiety, while my mind replayed every face I had seen over the past few months. I kept trying to remember whether I had seen that man before. The next morning, I called in sick to work and went straight to the police station. A kind policewoman listened patiently while I explained everything. But in the end, she told me there wasn't much they could do. There hasn't been a direct threat, she explained carefully. But if anything else happens, call us immediately. I left the station feeling even worse. More alone. More vulnerable. Like I was trapped in this huge, cold city with someone watching me from the shadows. I went back to work the following day, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every smile looked fake. Every glance felt suspicious. If somebody walked behind me for too long, panic immediately spread through my chest. I started avoiding empty streets, avoiding elevators, avoiding eye contact. But after that night, nothing happened, for a while. Then came the evening that changed my life forever. I had just returned home from work. The second I unlocked my apartment door, something felt wrong. I can't explain it properly. It was like my instincts were screaming at me not to go inside. But I ignored the feeling. I stepped into the apartment. Everything looked normal at first. The kitchen lights were off. The living room was as I left it. Nothing seemed disturbed. Then I walked into my bedroom and froze. My bed was covered in photographs, hundreds of them. Pictures of me leaving work. Pictures of me grocery shopping. Pictures of me sitting in cafes. Pictures of me inside my apartment, watching television. My entire body went numb. A cold chill crawled slowly down my spine. I turned around, ready to run, and that's when I saw him. A man standing silently in the bedroom doorway. Tall, wearing a black raincoat. The man I bumped into on a rainy night. The same man who had accidentally taken my wallet and keys. I opened my mouth to scream, but before I could make a sound, he lunged at me. He grabbed my hair violently and slammed me onto the floor. My head hit the floor so hard that my vision instantly blurred. A sharp pain exploded through my skull, and I felt warm, thick blood running from my nose onto my lips. My heart pounded so violently it physically hurt. Dazed, I turned my head toward the hallway. And then I saw another man. The man in the baseball cap. He was standing there silently, staring at me. Then everything went black. I woke up in a hospital room. My head was buzzing with pain, and everything around me felt distant and blurry. The first thing I saw was the man in the baseball cap sitting beside my bed. I panicked instantly. I tried pulling away, my heart racing, but he immediately stood up and raised his hands calmly. "Hey, it's okay," he said quickly. "You're safe." Then he told me he was an undercover police officer. The police had been investigating a man responsible for attacking several young women in apartment buildings around the area over the past few months. After I filed my report about the messages and the stalking, they started monitoring the building closely. They knew he would eventually make a move, he explained. I remember just staring at him while his words slowly sank in. He told me they had been watching me, and that was because of me. They finally caught him. "You helped us stop him," he said. "You handled yourself really well." He said it like I was supposed to feel proud, like I was some kind of hero. But I didn't feel proud. I felt sick. Because all I could think was, they knew I was in danger, and they still let it happen. That realization hit me harder than the attack itself. I was bait. The thought kept repeating inside my head over and over. I was used as a bait. 3 years ago, my younger sister disappeared. No suspects were ever arrested. No body was ever found. She just vanished. I don't really want to say her real name, so I'll just call her Mia. She was 21 at the time. She went out with a couple friends to a bar downtown, texted my mom at around 11:30, saying she'd be home soon. And after that, nothing. Her car was found parked 3 blocks from her apartment. Her phone was gone. And somehow, despite cameras being all over that area, police never found footage showing where she went. That whole situation completely destroyed my family. My parents barely speak anymore unless it's about Mia. My mom developed this habit of leaving the kitchen light on all night because she said she wanted the house to look welcoming, just in case. I think deep down, she still believes Mia's going to walk through the front door. I handled it horribly. I became paranoid, angry, depressed. I stopped hanging out with people. I lost relationships because I pushed everybody away. Every conversation eventually circled back to my sister. Then I had some kind of breakdown. I was in a grocery store and saw a girl who looked exactly like Mia from behind. Same hair, same height. I followed her through almost 3 aisles before she finally turned around. It wasn't her. I ended up having a panic attack right there near the frozen food section. After that, I started therapy. Medication, counseling, support groups. It helped. Not completely, but enough that eventually I could sleep through most nights. Enough that I started thinking maybe life wasn't over. I decided to give my life a second chance. So against my better judgment, I downloaded Tinder. At first, it was mostly just awkward conversations and fake-looking profiles. Then I matched with a girl named Clara. Her profile immediately felt different. She didn't have overly filtered pictures or weird attention-seeking bios. Most of her photos looked normal. One was her holding a coffee mug while sitting on a porch swing. Another was her hiking somewhere in the mountains. She looked shy, normal. We talked for about a week before meeting in person. I remember being nervous driving to the restaurant because it was my first actual date in years. When I got there, she was already outside waiting. She smiled when she saw me. That immediately made me relax. Dinner went way better than I expected. She was funny in a quiet way. She actually listened when I talked. Most people just wait for their turn to speak, but Clara paid attention. That was rare. We ended up sitting there for almost 4 hours. After that, we started seeing each other constantly. Coffee shops, bars, movie nights. For the first time in years, I felt like my brain finally had something else to focus on besides Mia. Then one night, everything changed. We were sitting at a bar near the river. It was raining outside, and the place was mostly empty except for a few people near the pool tables. At one point, Clara gently touched my hand and said, "I can't even imagine how horrible it must feel not knowing where your sister is, or if she's still alive." The second she said that, I felt my stomach drop, because I had never told her about Mia, not once. I asked how she knew. She shrugged, casually. "I looked you up online," she said. I immediately felt uncomfortable. The thing was, my name never appeared publicly in connection to Mia's disappearance. My parents intentionally kept me out of interviews and news coverage because of how badly I was already handling things. So hearing Clara casually mention my sister felt wrong. Maybe she found old Facebook posts, maybe mutual friends, maybe some article I forgot existed. I told her I didn't really like talking about Mia. She apologized and squeezed my hand. "I understand," she said. But after that, she kept bringing it up. Not constantly. Like she was testing how far she could go. She'd randomly ask things like, "Do you think your sister trusted the wrong person?" Or, "If she's still alive somewhere, do you think she'd try contacting you?" One night, she asked whether I thought Mia suffered. That question genuinely made me feel sick. The more we dated, the stranger it became. She knew details she shouldn't know. She correctly described the necklaces Mia wore the night she vanished. Those details were never released publicly. I finally confronted Clara. I asked her directly where she was getting all this information. She smiled, not warmly, almost like she enjoyed seeing me nervous. Then she said, "You'd be surprised what people leave behind online." I ended things the next day. I tried doing it respectfully. I told her I wasn't emotionally ready for a relationship. She stared at me silently for a few seconds. Then she said, "You should be careful who you let into your life." Her voice firm and cold. After she left, I honestly felt relieved. For a few days, everything seemed normal. Then the package showed up. I got home from work around 7 p.m., and found a small brown parcel sitting outside my apartment door. No return address, just my name written on the front. I opened it in my kitchen. Inside was a silver necklace with a tiny moon pendant. The second I saw it, my entire body went numb. Because it belonged to Mia. She wore it the night she disappeared. At the bottom of the package was a folded piece of paper. It only had 4 words written on it. "Do you remember this?" I immediately threw up. I called police right away. Detectives came to my apartment, collected the package, and questioned me for hours. But when they tried to find Clara, they discovered almost everything about her was fake. The Tinder profile was deleted. The phone number no longer worked. Even her last name turned out to be fake. Police investigated for months. Nothing ever came from it. To this day, nobody found out who Clara was. But I know one thing for sure. Since that day, something in me has broken forever.